H.R. 2662, the IG Independence and Empowerment Act, is a package of critical reforms to strengthen the independence and authority of federal inspectors general. I introduced this bill with Leader Hoyer, Subcommittee Chair Conley, Subcommittee Chair Lynch, Vice Chair Gomez, Congresswoman Porter, and Congressman Liu. The IG Independence and Empowerment Act contains a bill that I authored last year to protect IGs from political retaliation. This reform would allow an IG to be removed only for a documented cause, based on a defined list of legitimate, nonpartisan reasons, such as malfeasance, knowing violation of the law, or gross mismanagement. I introduced this provision last year after the previous administration retaliated against multiple IGs. Last April and May, President Trump fired the IGs for the State Department, the intelligence community, after they conducted oversight of the President and his top advisors. This legislation would ensure that IGs are protected against this type of retaliation and for just doing their jobs of oversight. Supporting IGs and ensuring that they can perform their work with independence and access to information has long been a bipartisan issue on this committee. The IG Independence and Empowerment Act contains measures that this committee has reported out favorably in the past with unanimous bipartisan support. One example is the IG Subpoena Authority Act, which was introduced this Congress by Vice Chair Gomez to give IGs the ability to compel testimony from contractors and former federal employees. This provision includes bipartisan compromises worked out years ago between Chairman Issa and Ranking Member Cummings. Another bipartisan measure in this bill is the Integrity Committee Transparency Act, which was introduced by Chairman Conley and Ranking Member Heiss, and which this committee approved unanimously earlier this month. This also includes the IG Access Act to provide greater accountability for Department of Justice attorneys by closing the loophole that prohibits the IG from initiating attorney misconduct investigations. This was introduced by Congresswoman Ross with bipartisan support from Congressman Issa, Subcommittee Chair Raskin, myself, Subcommittee Chair Conley, Subcommittee Ranking Member Heiss. The IG Independence and Empowerment Act also includes Congresswoman Porter's provision to ensure that temporary acting IGs are independent and qualified to serve in their role. And finally, a common sense reform proposed by Congresswoman Spear that would enhance training for IGs is included in the substitute amendment being considered by the committee. Components of this bill have received strong support from the National Taxpayers Union and R Street Institute. In a letter to the committee, these groups highlighted support for several pieces of this bill and urged us to work together on a bipartisan basis to enact needed reforms to strengthen IGs. Without objection, I would like to place their letters into the record. So ordered. We also received a support letter from DOJ Inspector General Michael Horowitz with helpful background on provisions of the bill that would allow his office to investigate DOJ attorney misconduct and provisions that would grant IG testimonial subpoena authority. Without objection, I will place that letter in the record. So done. IG Horowitz wrote, and I quote, "I encourage all members of the committee to support these important reforms. In the long bipartisan tradition of this committee on such matters, and to improve government effectiveness and accountability," end quote. Finally, the Project on Government Oversight, or POGO, sent a letter urging the committee to approve this bill, and without objection, I will place that letter also into the record. POGO Executive Director Danielle Bryan wrote, and I quote, "The IG Independence and Empowerment Act represents a comprehensive approach to some of the biggest issues the Inspector General community faces today. I urge Congress to prioritize enacting it," end quote. I thank all members who worked on pieces of this bill, and I urge every member of the committee to support it. Who else seeks recognition?